This is Hannibal here from thehannibaltv.com. And today we have a special guest from the world famous Guerrero wrestling family. He's been in NWA, WCW, he's wrestled in Mexico, he's wrestled in WWE, also known as Lasertron and the Gobbledygooker, none other than Hector Guerrero. How are you doing today, sir? Oh, you got your Lasertron mask.
Sure, I got it right here, brother. I got one of the originals. They have two originals from the very beginning. How you doing, Scott? It's just my pleasure to be on your show. It's always a pleasure just talking about wrestling and things that that was in the past, but very much in our future. And it's just an honor. Thank you so much for the privilege.
Well, it's a pleasure having you on. You're, of course, the son of the legendary Gory Guerrero. Could you start off by telling us what it was like growing up in a wrestling family?
Yeah, you have a wrestling ring in your backyard, and it's fun, but it's dangerous. And then having a father that was so strict and he was like, you know, you'd be, he taught us from the very first things of rolling and learning how to defend ourselves in the ring, and then he taught us about applying holds and that wrestling was a chess game, and that wills did overcome in the chess game, and you just knew how to use that power, how to use that leverage when you needed to, and you did it. And if you knew how to do it, you could do very good.
And for the people that aren't familiar with your father, I know he teamed with El Santo. He's one of the all-time greats in Mexico as far as legendary wrestlers. Could you tell us a little bit about the history of your father wrestling in Mexico? Gory, of course, has to do with blood, right? And he was known as a bleeder.
Yes. He started as Joe Morgan, if I remember right. And because of the fact that he was born in Ray, Arizona, and then he was raised in Mexico, in Guadalajara, Mexico. And he started in the school with the Diablo Velasco was one of his trainers. He went into to box. He went in Guadalajara, and he was looking for boxing, but then he saw wrestling and he got into wrestling, and he really loved wrestling, and he got into it. He met up with El Santo back then, but not in Guadalajara when he went and he made his way into Mexico City, because the Mecca was Mexico City. And it was Empresa Mexicana de Lucha Libre, which is EMLL. And then the Luderoff, the old man, the original, the one that he actually won the lottery, and that's how he got himself started in wrestling. So they had a lot of wrestlers at that time. Some of the names, man, that they go back. And my dad, El Santo, but even before that, you had other great wrestlers like Tarzan Lopez, my uncle Enrique Yanez, with my dad later on married his sister, which is my mother. So it's all kind of like a family in families. I have a cousin, his name is Javier Yanez, and he is a very good wrestler. And him and his brother are very good judo guys who were national champions in Mexico. But let's go back to my dad and El Santo. El Santo and him became a very famous pair as a tag team, as heels, as bad guys, and they were called. They would cause a lot of stuff. My dad was always known for causing riots in Mexico City. As a matter of fact, one of my brothers, Armando, which is my brother Mando, he's named after one of the riots that my dad caused when he was born. My brother Mando, which is 4 years older than I am, was born the night that my dad had one of the biggest riots that made newspaper headlines in all Mexico City. And my dad was the one that caused it. he was quite a guy. He never backed down. Even the public went after him, and he backed the public up. I've heard many stories of that. But him and El Santo became like legends. And of what I understand, my dad was very, very, very famous and very, very well put. I got some pictures with him with holding 3 belts. and he was at one time he was the middleweight, the welterweight, and the lightweight champion of Mexico. And that time, the NWA had given the lightweight belts to Mexico, and my dad was three of those champions at one time. At one time, I actually have that picture. Uh, uh, El Santo and him became very famous. El Santo went on into the movies, and then he became like untouchable. He was so famous. Like, my gosh, everybody. Anytime El Santo came to work for my father, when my father became a promoter in Juarez and in El Paso, back in the '60s and '70s, it was a sold out houses every time. He was so famous. But that's more of a legend that they both created, and it's history. Does that answer a little bit of your question?
Yeah, is it true at one point your dad actually caught some type of disease related to bleeding as well, but he overcame it?
I don't know anything about that. He never told me that.
Okay.
And if somebody knows that about that, like maybe my aunt, my mother, well, God rest, she's gone now. My mother never told me something like that. You know, a lot of people know more me than I know because they probably saw him, but everybody that saw my father are probably already, gone or getting close to
Yeah,
go.
I think it may have been in Eddie's book or something, but
Yes, Eddie has a lot of the history, and because my mother's, told us a lot of the history. Uh, there is a lot of history with my father, and I want to say that he was a patriarch, and to me, he was the best of us all. Yes, and definitely. I mean, Eddie, the most famous maybe because of the way television and media, but my father was like top dog, man, top dog. And if he would have reached out in world like WWE does in the world, I'm sure he would have been as popular, more popular than my brother Eddie. I don't see that. I say that with a lot of respect. I love my brother Eddie, and I miss him very dearly, and as I do my father, and as I do Chavo Senior, and my mother, and anybody that's lost anybody, family members, we hold them dear in our heart. But we know that our family, Hannibal, was a God-fearing family. And my father and my mother always taught us about our Lord. And his name is Jesus, which is Yahusha in the real name, because that means Savior in Hebrew. And he was implanted in our hearts, and we were taught that way from the very beginning. Now, some of us, they're kind of wild and kind of crazy, yes, because the Guerrero blood is still in us. But we know who our Savior is.
is it true that your father was also kind of the behind the scenes enforcer in Mexico for various promoters?
Yeah, very. He was a pistol, if you know what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a pistol. There's some incidents that happened to me when I came to Mexico. Well, I started in 1973. In about 74, I decided to start going to Mexico City, and I would book myself through my cousin, Javier Yanez, which is my mom's, brother. My mom, look, my father married my uncle Henry's daughter. I mean, sister, which is my mother, and so we became a family. So Javier would bring me into Mexico, and I had a lot of opportunities to go into Mexico, and there was a lot of things that happened there that were interesting. Can't probably talk about them over the air, but it's just it's something that you don't forget, and you don't and it doesn't go away. Go ahead.
Is it true? I don't know if it was like that in your father's day, but I heard in the more modern era that there's a lot of drugs in the Mexican wrestling scene. I know that your family name wasn't really attached to any of that, but I've heard that compared to other places, like it's a bit more wild backstage as far as the backstage environment.
Look, my father's career started probably about in 19 late 1930s, and all the Guerreros we were involved later on, but I'd never heard that from my father, and neither did I hear that from anybody around that was to my father. And if the guys that were kind of crazy, they drank beer. We did all wrestlers. I've known that like to drink their beers and have their cocktails and all that. But that what you're saying, I've never heard that, and I'm not lying to you. I'm telling you the truth. And I would hear certain circumstances that might have been, but it wasn't like any of the top stars. Now he's talking about the guys that were in there underneath, way back. I don't know because I was never there around, and I wouldn't say that because I don't know.
There's a fan on here, Mike, that wants to know if you've ever run into Tito Santana. What are your thoughts on him?
Oh man, he's super. He's a nice guy. I, Tito is a big image of us Mexicans because he's tall and he's bigger than Chavo was bigger. I mean, he's taller. You know what I mean? And no, Tito's a super nice guy, and I like his ring savvy. I have a lot of respect for him, and he's my countryman. He's my, he's one of our beloved Mexican wrestlers that has had very very good what do you call it? You know, history in the United States and the American wrestling, and he's been very very popular, and I have a lot of respect for him.
When I interviewed Tito, he said it was kind of between him and Bret Hart on who was going to get that title push. Do you think if they had gone with Tito, he could have had as much success as Bret did?
Oh yeah, Tito is he's very charismatic, and nobody can take that away from him. And charisma has a lot to do. See, you go to certain wrestlers and they can be like really super good, but they got no charisma. It's it's good, but they have no charisma. And I could name some names, but I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, I think the fans know who you're talking about. Mike gives a little tip here and says, any thoughts on the passing of Hector Garza?
Yeah, I really liked Hector. I worked with him in WCW, and he was coming in, and I was going out. So they usually favor the ones that are staying. And I had a very good match with him. I really enjoyed him. I thought he was a very, very good looking young man. And a lot of the girls thought so too. So I'm sure that's why they were pushing him pretty strong. But I have a lot of respect for him. How the circumstance happened, oh man, I see that. You can still go back and look at it, and you can see that was a horrible accident, and those around him did not realize that he was that had happened to him, and it's not their fault. It's not anybody's fault. It's just a circumstance that happens with Hector. And he's my tocayo in Mexico. When you have the same last name, you say tocayo, and you have kind of like affinity with them. And so my respects for him. He was a very good wrestler, and what I say, in Mexico, everybody goes, oh, he does a lot. Let me give you a little bit of history now. There's some things that are called ring wrestling, and there's some things that are called flying acrobatics. Nowadays, there's a lot of that, and I kind of help bring it in. I know that because I used to do a lot of it myself, but I also wrestled. Uh, Hector could do the both. He could wrestle and he could do everything that he did, and so it was a very very sad day, especially for those that knew him and those that had respect for him. Especially, I'm sure his family, his mother, and his family are very very hurt. But that's a circumstance, and that's why we need to believe in the Creator, and because we're all going to meet up in paradise, and if you accept Him, you're there, and you're not. Well, that's not a good deal. That's not a good place either.
Well, speaking of that, we just lost the Iron Sheik. Did you have any interactions with him over the years?
Very very few. In the American Wrestling Association, when the Guerreros were involved with the Gagnes, which I have deeply respect for the Gagnes, and golly, yeah, nothing but accolades and respect for them. And they respected us and they liked us. So let's get back to the Iron Sheik. He was there, and he was always an interesting guy. He knew his wrestling, and he knew how to, control himself in the ring. That's what I'm going to say about him. I didn't know him more personally that I could say something. I'm sorry about his family, and I send my deepest condolences.
Another guy we just lost was a good friend of mine and a mentor to me, superstar Billy Graham, who was buried in the same cemetery as your brother Eddie. Do you have any memories of him?
Oh yeah, much memories. I remember him as he came into the limelight, and he came into New York before New York took over the whole situation. When they were still in the northeastern states, when they were up there in their states, and everybody, everybody talked about the Big Apple, and when Bruno Sammartino met a guy that was, coming here, big, strong, and this is guy you got here, and then you see him how he is in the ring. I said, okay, he's not just a body. This guy can wrestle, and he knows how to motivate a crowd. He knows how to take a match. And I said, this was great. And then when I came to Florida and I wrestled about the second or third time. It was the third time, no, the second time, because I did 3 tours in Florida, and now I live in Florida, so I ended up here. So anyway, let's go back to the tours. He was in my second tour with my brother Chavo, and I were tagging as a Bandidos, which is a great, I love working with my brother Chavo. And but we were very close because he was a bad guy, we were the bad guys. So when you go to the towns, you go together, and we rode many times with him, and I loved every time again. I still remember him in the dressing rooms, and he'd grab a dumbbell, right, and he'd go and he'd be going, and we'd come, hey Billy, what's going on? And he'd say, hey, get ready for the Big Apple, going back to the Big Apple, and he was pumping iron. And but most of all, I want to tell you about him is that he was a Christian, and he loved the Lord, and the Lord loved him. I know it. He and I talked many times later on, and there was a thing that was in what was it? Athletes in Ministry, and that was held in Arizona, in Phoenix, and we went down there, and I had a great time talking with him. The times that I had the opportunity to talk, and he was the one that was the head of when Eddie's at Eddie's funeral. He was the one that was leading everything, and he's pretty strong in what he said to Vince and what he said to others. So I have my deep respect for him and his wife now. That, she probably misses the heck out of him. So do we, But if we have that again, we come back to the Creator, and you believe in Him, and you receive Him as Lord and Savior, then you're going to be fine, because you know what? You're going into eternity, into paradise, and that's where we all meet up.
Didn't at one point he also make sure that your family got into the WWE Hall of Fame because for some, like to actually watch it one year or something, maybe the year that he was inducted?
Look, if it did, I don't know anything about that.
Okay.
And the only person that I know that's in the Hall of Fame is Eddie.
Right.
I don't know if there's any of the other Guerreros, but remember, there was that wrestled. You got you got Gory, Chavo, Mando, myself, Eddie. I'm talking in ages, and then Junior, which is Chavo Senior's son. And I don't know if we're going to have some more. Shaw's tried it for a while. I was hoping she was going to stick with it. I was so ready to teach her what I know in wrestling. I know a lot, but my grandma and I were very close friends, and he's the son of Eddie Graham. And before Mike passed away, we were talking, and he says, Hector, you remember the way we used to wrestle? And we wrestled like, we didn't choreograph. We went up there and we wrestled each other. And it was like a chess game, like I told you earlier, and if you knew how to put your strength where here or there, you're going to get advantage of that chess game. And that's how we learn it. Mike said, you know what? That's that art that you and I know. Look how he said that art of wrestling is long gone. It's a forgotten art of wrestling. So I'd like to teach it, but they all think they need to do all these triples and all this. It looks like a flying trapeze now. But they put a lot of drama into it now too. We used to create the drama within the match by how we wrestled each other. not by how they acted or how they did somebody run in and did that. No, we did it in the ring, and that's the art of it. And not too many people can do that anymore.
No, I agree. And now there's so many hours of wrestling, and there's so many people that do acrobatics. It's not as special anymore as it once was, when there was fewer people doing it. But I agree with you. Shawl has potential. I've seen some of her matches, and if she ever gets back into it, we'd definitely be interested in using her up here in Canada. So hopefully she will get the bug again to get back into wrestling, because she has the look for sure.
Yeah, yeah. You know what? And Shaw. Not only that. I mean, just we all have to be teachable because uh, even that I had a problem with that until my dad settled me down and made me understand. And we all had that. We come up when we think we know more than the teacher, and that's that's human intuition, right? But Shaw, I can see that she has it. It's a gift, and it's not gone without her. It is there. All she has to do is develop it if she wants to.
Now, I read in Eddie's book that he used to get into a lot of fights growing up as Gory's son. He seems like a lot more fiery personality than you, but did you have the same issues in high school? And did you grow to high school with your brothers and have them to kind of back you up, or were you on your own?
I was on my own. my mother was more the fighter. It's been more the fighter. I was more the diplomat. And if I didn't have to fight, I wasn't going to fight. You know what I mean? If they came and they threw the first punch, oh yeah, you're going to get a response, and you're not going to like it. And that the Guerrero came out of me there. But I hold that back. And knowing our Savior and knowing our circumstances, you have to learn how to hold that back. And then when it's time to do it, then you do it. But I always look at the Savior in his last moments. He did fight back, and he took everything they gave him, and yet it meant so much for all of us to learn what he did for us, and that's a great thing. Now, that the rest of the girls, oh yeah, we had to fight. We did, and we did when we would, mostly in the ring sometimes because people don't realize a lot of temperatures flare in the ring. Oh, I didn't like that move. Oh, hey, here, bam, you get right in the chin and you're bleeding in the mouth. Turn around and then you go, bam, and you hit him and you go, hey, that's your receipt. And then, it starts. So a lot of people don't realize that, but it does happen. And it happens, and there's a lot of things happen in the dressing room too. Promoters don't like it, and you get in a lot of trouble with that. But that's just the nature of the beast.
And as far as your father, he actually ran the El Paso territory back in the territory days. Could you tell us a little bit about that territory?
Oh well, he started it back. My dad was a traveling wrestler and had a family. He traveled between Mexico and the United States. And usually, because in Mexico, you're making pesos, in the United States, you're making dollars. And back then, when he was wrestling at that time, there was 12 pesos per dollar. So it's 12.50 per dollar exactly. So you're making more money when you make dollars to Mexican pesos. So my dad would travel from Mexico to different places in the United States. One of them was Charlotte, North Carolina, working for who was it at that time? Those that are in Charlotte. It'll come back to me. I got some.
Crockett, the
Yeah,
Crockett.
the Crockett's, but the dad. Talking about the dad.
Yeah, I
Jimmy
think Jim
Crockett.
Crockett Sr., maybe.
Yes, Crockett Senior. And then he worked for St. Joseph, Missouri. I don't know who was in charge then. I think Bob Geigel, if I remember right. If I might be wrong. And then he also worked for Leroy McGurk, and I remember that because I worked for Leroy McGurk, and Leroy talked very highly of my dad to me, and respected him, and I respected him very much. As did Danny Hodge and my dad, and I respected Danny too. I got to meet him too. He refereed one of my matches. I loved it, man. He gave me all kind of advice, and as Freddie Blassie did too in California. Let's get back to what we were saying. So in wrestling, you have a lot of opportunities to meet with so many that you're always being influenced by the beauty of the older generation, which now they don't respect. And I wish they did, because you know what? They might learn something from us. But, maybe they'll learn it someday. And maybe when it happens to them, then they'll say, oh, right?
100%. And as far as you mentioned, sometimes wrestlers had to take care of stuff in the dressing room. Did you ever witness any of these backstage fights in the dressing room?
Look, if you did, you don't talk about them. And you do yours. That's respectful. That's a wrestler thing. You don't say those things. And they happened, but I'm sorry, I'm not going to talk about bad about anybody or good about anybody about that. I know you guys would love to hear that, but that's kind of personal. And every wrestler, I'm sure every wrestler, like if it involved me, I wouldn't like people talking bad about me. So, I'm going to respect everybody on that.
And you spent some time in the Los Angeles territory working for Mike LaBelle. How was the LA territory in those days?
Oh, I loved it, man. You had, let me tell you, I'll give you the run. You had Wednesday nights, they would start TV nights, would be TV at the Olympic Auditorium. Thursdays, it went from being, it used to be Bakersfield, but then they decided to do something different. It was a spot show, and that could be anywhere in Southern California. Bakersfield, they changed it from Thursday to Saturday, and the reason was because one time we were in Bakersfield and it snowed us in, and we couldn't get back over the mountain to get back into LA, so they had to send a plane for us. So Mike LaBelle, which is a promoter, decided to change Bakersfield from Thursday to Saturdays. Fridays was the Olympic Auditorium. That was the big night. That was biggest show down in LA. Then you had Saturday night, which I told you was Bakersfield, or before that it was a spot show. Sundays was San Bernardino. Mondays was Ventura. And I used to love going because you go right next to the Ventura Highway and you go all the way up there and you wrestle in Ventura. And when you're coming back, you're going right back, the 101, which is a Ventura Highway. And it was just beautiful. Yeah, I just love that. Love the people there. And then Tuesday night we were in San Diego, and then back on Wednesday to TV. So that's what's kind of like what LA looked like. Alameda. That was my first territory in the United States that I wrestled. I had been previously, I was 78, so 5 years. I started in 73 as a pro. I started teaching wrestling classes when I was 12, and that was way before that. So I've been wrestling since I was 12 years old. I'm now 69. So it's come a long ways.
Well, you look great for 69. Of course, you ended up winning the NWA Junior Heavyweight Championship. How did you get that opportunity? Oh, you got it right there.
Give me this one. Yeah. Well, that was a thing with I was talking to Dusty one time, and Dusty Rose, he was a booker for the Crockett's in North Carolina, and I said, Dusty, we need to do, what do we do something for the kids? And he was all for it. And so at that time, you had Megatron and you had Rototon and all these things where the kids were on TV, and they were really excited about that. And also, they come up with a game called Laser Tag. And believe it or not, some of the guys, we used to get together, we'd play Laser Tag, and we'd have fun. We'd meet up on our days off. We'd go play Laser Tag against each other. So it was fun. It was a pretty fun time. But this guy right here we decided to do, this is one of my original masks. You can tell that's a brain worn there. This is my other one. I got another one here. And so we decided to do Lasertron. And Dusty went all for it. And so Lasertron got the best of Denny Brown and became the NWA World Junior Heavyweight Champion. And this is a replica of the belt. A friend of mine was donated to me, and that Very, very thankful for him to doing it. Bruce Owens. I love him very much. He's a very, very good friend and a very good Christian. Uh, so that's how it happened. And then I stayed the champion, except, really, truly, honestly, when the Crockett territory was really flourishing, they had 2 towns a night. So if you were on the big towns, you were making some big money. If you were in the small towns, you weren't making so much money. So at that time, they had joined Boogie Woogie Man, Jimmy Valiant, and Lasertron together. And we were hitting all the main events, but in the lesser towns, if you understand what I'm trying to say, the smaller towns. And so you're getting, not great pay and not bad pay, but you're not getting the cream of the crop. Then once in a while they give you one or two during that week, or you have one, and then the rest of the towns you were always doing the other small towns. So I wasn't making any money, and as a professional wrestler, you got to make money, because if not, you're not making any money. You're not doing anywhere. So, with all due respect, I respected the Crockett's and I respect Dusty and I respect everybody. But I just made a decision that, I needed to go to greener pastures, and I did. And I gave them back the belt. I never lost it. I gave them back the belt. I respected them for it. They respected me back. And I said, thank you very much. And to this day, I'm very thankful for the opportunities they gave me, because they could have not given me nothing, like anything, right? And so you're thankful for the opportunities that you get. And, maybe someday, someplace, somewhere else, some circumstance will come that'll be a lot better and a lot more favorable. In my case, maybe it already passed as far as wrestling goes. But I'm also a teacher. You don't know that. I have a kinesiology degree, a Bachelor of Science in Kinesiology from the University of Texas El Paso. So I became a teacher. I have a minor in education. So I've been doing that I'm about to retire. And so soon, if my Lord permits me, that's with his permission.
Are you a high school teacher?
No, I am K through 12 certified. That means I can teach from kindergarten to 12th grade. But I prefer the elementary grades. The middle school, they got too many hormones. High school, they know it all. So I say, heck, man, give me the little ones. And now the little ones, from maybe third grade to fourth grade, fifth grade, now they're starting to act the same way. And I'm like, wow. But give me my first and second graders, and they love me, and I love my little kindergartners. So I'm happy with them.
Now, I understand you went on to, you mentioned before, the American Wrestling Alliance. At one point, you won a title with Dr. D. David Schultz. Any memories of working with him?
Listen, with all due respect, I don't remember winning a title with Dr. Schultz. I don't have any recollection of that. In the American Wrestling Association, Mondo was the one that was the first Guerrero to start wrestling with them, and then Mondo called. They pulled Chavo in, and then they pulled me in, and I'm talking about Chavo Senior. And then we did the triple thing. We did the trios. But I never wrestled as a tag team with David Schultz. Please forgive me, but I don't.
We'll correct it now on your Wikipedia, because I just copied and pasted it. That's directly from your Wikipedia. It says in the late 80s you were a world tag team champion in the AWA. But I believe you. But we're setting the record straight.
Mondo and I were world tag team champions with the WWF. When they sent they had these belts, and they sent them to Mike LaBelle, and so they had a big tournament. And Mondo and I were the ones that gained that tournament. We have a picture there, several pictures that we took together, and we have the belts on us. And we at that time, I remember, because the belts are so big that we couldn't put them around our waist. Everybody used to put their belts around their waist, so we put them over our shoulders. So that's the way. I guess, and then you started seeing a lot of guys start doing that too.
Did you have much dealings with Vince McMahon Sr.?
Well, Vincent, the only time that I really got started with Vince was during the time that they wanted to do the gobbledygooker, and that was a good thing. That was for the kids. That wasn't for that wasn't for what do you call it, for the adults. And I've never wrestled in at the Meadowlands. You know what I mean? That's what I'd never been there, so I didn't know what kind of crop it was. So when I broke out of the egg, I was dressed up in the egg, which was 6 hours in there because they had me in there because they didn't want anybody to know who was in there. And they had a big old wooden box, and then the egg was on top of it. And so I was inside the egg for a long time. So anyway, give you back to there. So when I broke out and I saw that, it was like, wow, and they were booing it. I mean, a lot of boos, man. And I guess they were expecting maybe Hulk Hogan come out there of the egg because they were calling it exciting at the Survivor Series, or they were expecting maybe China to come out or something. But then here comes out a picture of a guy dressed in a turkey suit, and it was kind of like supposed to be like the San Diego Chicken. They were trying to make something like that, but for the kids, and they booed the heck out of it. Anyway, Gene Okerlund, he says to me, "Come on, kid, let's get this thing over." So we did. We went up there, and he followed everything I did. I danced with him, and he tried to do stuff. He would fall. Next day, he was black and blue, and I'm talking about his legs and all that. And he tried so hard, and I have a lot of respect, and I know he rest in peace, my friend. But I really do. So Vince had the right idea. It's just in the wrong place. Now, when we did it at when the WW at that time, WWF went to Orlando and we did it, and I came out of the gobbledygooker. It was great. It was awesome. It was like the kids went crazy, but not the Meadowlands. You can't do it in the Meadowlands. So he had the right idea, just the wrong place. And I believe we all make mistakes. And that was just one mistake that we all make, and we have to be forgiving to each other, and that's it.
Was it them that approached you with that job, or were you calling them to try and get jobs prior to the gobbledygooker?
Well, I'm going to tell you the truth. I'll tell you the truth here. I was calling them because I really wanted to get into the WWE. I thought I had a potential, and maybe they'd give me an opportunity, like all of us that tried, And so one day I called, and finally somebody picked up the phone and he says, "Who is this?" I mean, really nasty. I'll tell you who it was. It was Pat Patterson. He says, "Hey," he says, how did you get this number?" Because I had got the number for the booking office up in Connecticut, Stamford. And he says, "Now, don't ever call here again." And he hung up on me. And so I said, "You know what? If, they can take it," and I didn't think about it. So I was married to my first wife at that time, and I was home in Tennessee, and I was a gymnastics instructor, and somebody started calling, and it was from them. I don't know who it was, but my wife would pick up the phone and she'd say, "Hey man, it's WWF. They want to talk to you." I says, "I don't want to talk to them. Hang up on them." So she did. They called me about 5 times. Finally, once I picked up the phone, and it was then, and they said, "Hey, don't pick up. Don't close. Hector, don't." He says, "Vince wants to talk to you." So then Vince talked with me and talked to me and, told me about it, and we talked about it. And then he handed me over to Pat Patterson, which is interesting. You know what I mean? It was interesting. So anyway, that's how it happened. That's what happened. It didn't last. It didn't last 5, 6, 7 months, and then they give me my release, and that's the way it was.
How did they approach you with explaining the gimmick to you when Vince first talked to you about it on the phone?
No, he was very, very, very professional, like he is, and like he's been. He was very professional. This is his idea. And I believe that Dusty Rhodes at that time was working with him. Dusty had mentioned my name, that I would be a good thing for that. They also wanted to do something different, I heard later on. And they wanted to put me in also as a wrestler, and I would do both. I could do the gobbledygooker thing, and then also wrestle as the bandito. I think that's what they wanted to do. They were going to do me as a bandito, as a heel. I'm not a very big guy, you know what I mean? At that time, I was maybe 215, 220, but I could move, and speed was my thing. That's I had to, because the guys are really big. Those guys are really big and heavy too.
So was the gobbledygooker supposed to be like a mascot or an actual wrestler?
Well, he was supposed to be a mascot, I believe, and it was supposed to be for the like the Survivor Series, and for the Thanksgiving thing, Thanksgiving holidays. And then later on, I probably they would introduce me as the Bandito, and then every Thanksgiving Survivor Series, I'd come back out and promote Survivor Series as a gobbledygooker. That's what I believe they wanted to do, and that would have been really great because it would have been good. The money they promised never came through. I didn't. I mean, it's just. I mean, they could say it's hearsay, but I'm telling you the truth. I'm not telling you a lie. And but I'm thankful, because my brother Eddie, they treated him a lot better, and they treated him well, and they treated my Chavo Junior well, and they treated Chavo Senior. My brother Senior had some problems, but we all have problems. My gosh, do we all not?
Did you hear the story that The Undertaker, who also debuted on that Survivor Series, it might be one of the best Survivor Series of all time, by the way, in my opinion. But did you hear the story that The Undertaker initially thought that he was going to be the guy coming out of the egg?
I did. I heard that. I think Nick told me that, Nick Massey, and I said I never heard that, but maybe he did. Now, when I flew in, they flew me in and to go talk, the first time, and the limo picked me up at the airport, and guess who was there? Mark, the Undertaker. He was there sitting next to me. We were talking. They were hiring him at the same time, and we were in that. But it makes kind of sense. He probably thought that he might have been coming out of the egg, not this character they wanted to do for the children.
And I've heard you, I know you did a promo with Coco Beware and maybe some others where you're making the gobbledygooker sounds. Did somebody explain to you what sounds they wanted to hear, or was this
Never.
you ad-libbing?
No, I had to live it. I go, or I just do something because, and then the gobbledygooker had eyes, and when they had eyes like this, right? And they were all the white stuff like here, and you could see those little holes. So let me tell you an incident that happened. So they were gonna at Madison Square Garden. So that night they told me before the matches, everything before the people came in, that they wanted to showcase the gobbledygooker. I said, okay. He said, and I used to do a routine where I walked in, I flipped over the ring, I landed on my feet, I do the dance, I do a cartwheel, I do a round off, and I do some things that I know how to do. So they said, okay, well let's let him have a rehearsal. And he said, oh no, Hector's got it. Leave it alone, Hector. So okay, I could do it. I've been doing it for like 2 or 3 months now, and I said, yeah, I can do it. So they said, all right. So the time comes and they turn on the lights and they showcased me. And they turned off all the lights of Madison Square and they put a spotlight on me. And when I hit the spotlight, I couldn't see because those white eyes lit up like white and I couldn't see out of them. So I couldn't say anything. And look, and I need glasses and I still was trying to see out of that. That was a difficult situation. So the guys in the back, which I never realized who they were, because I would have probably come back and said something to them, were pushing me and saying, hey, you need to get out there. Come on. Hey, you're on. And I'm going, man, I can't see. So they pushed me out and I couldn't see that thing. I know that I was out because I could feel the cables on my feet. I started feeling my cables. I walked. I hit my shins. On the stairs, I knew because I went back and I was bleeding on my shins. And I got in, I felt the ropes, I flipped in. I didn't even know if I was flipping inside or outside of the ring. But I felt something on my feet and then I landed on my butt. And then the lights came on. So I got up and acted like I was hurt in my, like I was funny, like I did that on purpose, like I wanted to do that purpose. And then finally, when the lights came on, I did all my whole routine, spotless, nothing happened. So I come back into the dressing room right after the whole thing, right? I'm walking upstairs because it was upstairs. And I go through and Vince is looking at me like, got that look in his face, which not a good look. And I know he was a little ticked. I didn't want to say anything. So Gorilla Monsoon looks at me. He looks at me like that. And I didn't say anything. I go back and I get into my stuff and I start taking my stuff off. I'm thinking myself, screw this, man. So, but finally, Gorilla comes in. He goes, "You couldn't see, right?" And I go, "You think?" And then he said, "Yeah, we finally figured it out." But these guys were pushing me. They shouldn't have done that. But
And nowadays, of course, it would all be rehearsed and something that they put so much effort into promoting. It doesn't seem like they ever rehearsed with you.
well, yeah, but you see, I could do it. It's just that I couldn't do it blind. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Instead of
Yeah, I
being
mean,
dark, it was white. Everything was white. I couldn't see out those holes. That's what I'm trying to tell you. And they were
yeah,
pushing me, and I felt I was blind.
yeah.
They didn't realize that lights. Now, if we would have rehearsed it, and I would have said, no, 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 cut the lights, turn the lights on, let me come out on my own. Don't shine the lights on me, because I couldn't see worth nothing, man.
Was Pat Patterson nicer to you in person?
Look, Pat, I don't. Pat's already gone. We shouldn't talk about each other about. Pat was a great wrestler. I saw him wrestle against my dad in El Paso. I got a lot of respect for him for that. He was a great wrestler and knew how to wrestle. Oh my God, was he great? I mean, I saw matches with him with my father, and they were great wrestling matches. So that he didn't, I don't know. I'm not going to say nay or great, but he treated me that time. That was the truth of what I told you on the phone. Then later on, I was respectful to him, and he was respectful to me too, and that's the way it went.
And of course, they brought you back for the Battle Royal at WrestleMania 17. Do you have anything to share about that coming
Yeah,
back as the Gooker after all those years?
yeah. Well, I knew that I was going to be taken out by tugboat, Fred, and they told me they couldn't find the old because they asked when I gave the release papers, I sent them back the uniform, the gobbledygooker, what they had given me, and I sent it back to them. So I don't know what happened to them. They said we don't have it anymore, Hector. We've kind of got a different thing that we've got, and so instead of having the it was like a sock that went over with the eyes, and it was built for me in my face. This was a helmet, and it had like a little latch, and that was it. And so I went out on that battle royal, and I was in the air, and Fred had me up in the air, he had me way up in the air, and I'm going like that, and I'm grabbing onto my head because that mask, that head was popping out. I said, Fred, go ahead, let's get it done because this thing's coming off. So he was cool. He got it done, but that I had a good time with her, and they gave me an opportunity, and I'm thankful for that. And anytime the WWE gives me an opportunity, I'm very thankful. And I can't say anything bad about them. They did marvelous things with my family, with inducting my brother in the Hall of Fame, doing things with Eddie, doing things with talking well about my dad, and talking well about my brother Chalwin and Chalwin Jr. No, life is too short. We treat each other with respect. We treat each other. We forgive each other, and we go on. And I'm hoping that. And if they have something against me, well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I ever did anything to you. If I did it, forgive me. If not, that's between you and the Creator.
I know that they eventually put out a gobbledygooker toy. Do you get royalties off of that toy?
I don't know. I can't. I don't know. I'm not going to say yay or nay.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know.
I know there's
I
been
heard. I
several.
heard about it. I
Yeah.
heard about it. I said that'd be nice. I'm getting in my older years now. I'm getting old. And getting ready to retire as a teacher. 69. I'm going to be 69 this year. And I tell you what, every wrestler of one of us, like every pro athlete, and I tell you, I don't let them touch my body because here in Florida, I haven't had any surgeries yet. But some of my friends that had wrestlers that I know that have had surgeries, they haven't come out too good. So they always, these doctors think that they can work wonders, but I don't think so. All the wrestlers that I know that are hurt now, they're even sometimes worse than they were before. So I don't let them touch my body. The only one that touches my body is my Lord.
Now, I don't know if you heard about this, but a couple of years ago, the gobbledygooker was somebody else playing it,
Oh,
won
yeah.
the WWE 24/7 title. Were you disappointed that they didn't use you for that?
No, you know what? They were even mocking me. I know that because I saw it. It made me laugh, because I've never had anything against the McMahons, and that comes from the top, and or whoever they gave it to, But they treated me right, and like I said, I'm not going to talk bad about anybody, and there is no bad at talking about. And if they want to talk bad about me, that's between them and the Creator. This life is too short, man. You need to treat each other right and do right and forgive each other and keep going, man. And you know what? It's just an experience.
Now, you ended up in the later years, I think around 96, 97, re-signing with WCW when it's WCW now, and your brother Eddie and Chavo are in WCW. How was that experience? And was it them that recommended you to WCW, or how did that work?
No, I was seeking employment. This is what I had done. I had stopped in 1990. I found, sometimes the wrestlers get blackballed by promoters. And with all due respect, I have a lot of respect for promoters, but you guys, I'm talking about promoters, and if they're listening to me, promoters, you got to remember that we were sons of a promoter. All of us, Chavo, Mando, myself, Eddie, even Eddie. And we know about the promotion. And so we knew how promotion goes. And so when promotion goes with the way it goes, you understand. So not too many promoters liked us because we knew what it was. So I could see right through it when they were giving Eddie and Junior the opportunities, and they were smashing me down. They were killing me by getting beat by guys that didn't. And they let a guy that was 6 days into here. I was his sixth or seventh match, and they had him beat me. The guy, and they knew that they could trust me because I would create a match because I'm the senior. I'm the guy that knows how to dance with the broom, how to wrestle with the broom. And that's the way my dad taught us. If you can't wrestle, you got to be. If you can wrestle with a broom, you can wrestle anybody. So the way they treated me there, a lot had to do with who was in charge then. And I'm not going to name any names. You can figure that out on your own. And never treated me right, and took advantage of me. And when I decided to leave, I told Chavo and I told Eddie, I said, take care of the name. And I said my goodbyes because they weren't treating me right. They never gave me an opportunity. So so your time has passed. Okay, just tell me and then I'll leave. Don't keep using me. Then use me with guys that can't even couldn't even work in the ring, brother. And I'm and I respect that of guys that try it, and but you know what? This is a craft. You learn your wrestling in the gym, not just because you got a great body. You're a wrestler already. Okay, go over there and learn your craft. That's what I talk to. I have a consulting business. Okay, and it's wrestling. You can see my website is HectorWrestlingGuerrero.com, and I have a consulting business in there. And I do seminars, but it's not for free because I've paid my dues, and that's what a lot of wrestlers nowadays don't realize, that they need to pay their dues. A lot of them haven't paid their dues. Now I'm not going to say who pays their dues or who doesn't. That's for them to know, and then them to do it themselves. Yes, Guerrero's got an opportunity because of my father's fame. But also, when you have that opportunity for that one time, if you can't go through that door, that opportunity that they give you the first time, they forget you and you go away, and that's it. So we had to be good, and my father made us all good. So That's a lot of a little understanding. I mean, I get a little bit serious there because promoters didn't treat me right, and the one with they always had their favorites, and you have to go. And I understand, and I respect that, you know, and but I still, and the understanding of that with WCW, there was no respect there. There was no, at least you could have made my pockets a little bit fuller, and they didn't. They used to they my dad said it this way a long time ago. They prostitute you, and that's what they did to me. They prostituted me in my
So were
right.
you under contract to them, or were you on a
No,
per appearance basis?
no, I was trying to get a contract, but they never gave me. They promised it, a bunch of promises.
Right. So it's not like Barry Darso, who was getting 300 grand a year to put people over. You're getting a per night deal with no guarantee of continuous work, and it's making your name weaker on the independent scene to do these public jobs.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You said it. You said it there, and that's the truth. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it because a lot of promoters took advantage of that. And not just me, man. I'm talking about a lot of guys, man. But this is what I've learned about the creator. He puts in the circumstances, and we go through these situations, and how we treat each other, how we forgive each other. That's a good thing. And if some person that does evil to other people, if they don't repent and go rectify that, they're going to find themselves not in a nice place in eternity. It is good that they can be able to do the rectifying now, because now you can set it straight. But once you're into eternity, brother, there's no turning back. That's the gavel is down, bam, for the great white throne judgment. And I'm a very strong believer in the Creator, and I do. I read my Bible. I read the lost books of Eden. I read the book of Enoch, the book of Jasher, and the Jubilees. And if you don't believe in that, my gosh, then you're blind. And I'm hoping that your eyes will open.
Is there any story that you could share with the fans about Eddie that they may not have heard before?
No, I mean, my brother had. There's a lot of stories. I mean, golly, uh, Eddie was. Remember, Eddie was the youngest of the Guerreros, and like my brother Chavo, he's 5 years older than I am. My brother Mando's 4 years older than I am, and my brother Eddie is 13 years younger than I am. So with Chavo, he was actually 18 years younger. With Mando, he was actually 17. I mean, 17 years younger than all of us. So he was watching us as we learned to wrestle, and we were being broken in Mexico. We all started in Juarez, Mexico, because that's where we all started. Then Chavo went to California, Mando later, and then I later, and my dad also joined in Chavo in California. That success that Chavo had was an opening door in the American wrestling for the Guerreros at that time. But my dad was the one that called. They called Leo Garibaldi was the booker, and he called my dad. Was talking to my dad, and he said, "Man, we're looking for a Mexican, and we're looking this and this and that, and that he can do this and he can do that." And then my dad says, "That's my son." And so Leo says, "Can you send him?" He says, "Yeah." So there's when my brother Chavo got his great opportunity. Chavo Senior, Chavo Classic, we all call.
Yeah,
So
I actually met him a couple of times, and he's a really nice guy.
thank you. Yes, he is.
You did wrestle Eddie twice in WCW, right? Once as
Yeah.
yourself and once as Lasertron on Saturday night. Did you enjoy that at least, having those two
Oh
matches?
yeah. Oh my God, we had fun up there, especially at Lasertron, because with me and the mask, when I have this mask, you can't see my mouth. So I was constantly talking, and he couldn't see me. And I'm talking to him, and I'm talking to him. He's like, "Hey man, don't make me laugh." But my brother Eddie had so much talent. And my God, he had a little bit of my dad. He had a little bit of Chavo Senior. He had a little bit of Mondo. He had a little bit of me, and then he had a little bit of himself. And then Junior too, because Junior was influencing him too. So he had that, and then he had himself, And then all the ones that he had wrestled, that's what a lot of people don't understand, is that when you wrestle, like Lex Luger, right? Lex Luger had wrestled against Flair, wrestled against big names like Flair. And when you start wrestling big names like Flair, you start learning a lot. You learn how to lead a match, guide a match, when to go, when not to go, when to listen, and then when to grapple and when not. And that was Eddie received all of that from all of us. And so at that time they wanted to make him bad, and what else? Then make him confront him with a family member. And me being the older brother, I'm going like, hey, Eddie, you need to behave, blah blah blah. And then we did that little deal, and then he got it where he was a nasty little brother, beats up the older brother. You know what I mean? And that was to make Eddie heel, and we made him a heel.
And last question, of all the feuds that your dad had in the El Paso territory, what was the feud that drew the most for your father, and why did it draw the most?
Okay, there was some ones that I've talked about before, and the first ones that I ever saw that really packed the El Paso Coliseum, and it's a pretty big place, not a small place. I can't tell you how much it holds, but it holds. So the El Paso Coliseum at that time, it was 1962, 63, and my dad had some wrestlers in. He had the medics, and the medics they looked so much alike, and they would switch places in matches, and the red people would be going crazy. No, it's the other one. It's the other one. Like if they were in singles matches, one would come with the other, and then the one that was getting beat up, you roll out, the other one come in the first one, you come and roll out, then the other way come in and beat him, and the people would be going crazy. So the medics were a big draw in El Paso. So then there was also two other bad guys. They were bad, and then there was other two guys at that time, was the Mongol, okay, and then the Mummy, Benny Ramirez, and so the Mongol, and so my dad decided to do, you know what, we're going to put the medics versus the Mongol and the Mummy, and so they put them two together, and that was on wrestling was on at that time was on Tuesday nights, because it started the first time when he started, it was on Tuesday nights. Later on, he did it on Monday. Back when he came back in 1967, 66, 67, they started on Monday. But on Tuesday nights, in 62, 63, that's when that happened. And guess what? It packed up. The next time when they brought another that they did like that, that's back in the 60s, between 67 and 73, or in 74 era, they brought in Andre the Giant and packed them in. And when El Santo would show up, it always packed up too. So those were the main draws for my dad. El Santo, Andre the Giant, and that time he put the Mummy and the medics against each other. Wow.
Do you have an Andre the Giant story at all?
I got so many. Let me see. I have one that I can tell you. We were traveling. From Port. Well, he had the promoter back then. I won't say your name. Had a problem with his car because he went to pick up Andre at the airport, and Andre was so big that he broke his front seat. He was upset. So Andre was in the dressing room in Portland, and I was there at that time in the Portland, Oregon territory, and I happened to be there that wrestling time. That promoter was upset, and I offered to volunteer because I had a 1973 ragtop Lincoln Continental 2-door, and when I put that back seat back and down, I couldn't even reach the pedals. So I told the promoter at that time, I said, hey, I'd like to, if you want me to, I'm in the same shows he is for the next 2 weeks here, and we were in the same shows. I was in the earlier matches, you know what I mean, like preliminaries. He was in main events. So I said I didn't mind taking him, and he turned around and he was sitting down and he looked at me and he says, "You do that for me, boss?" I said, "Yes, sir, I would." And so we became very good friends. So we were traveling from Portland to Pendleton. So it was about, I'd say, maybe 3-4 hour drive. So I'm driving, and I'm not. He's talking to me, and I'm laughing, and he's laughing, and I had the way I could do it. I had the seat all the way back down. He was drinking beer because he drank beer. I seen him drink 48 beers on the way to the matches. So he drank all the way there. I'm talking 48 beers. He goes like a little bunch, throw it away. And so Andre, we're, I got stopped by the cops because I'm going faster than I should because he's making me laugh. I'm talking and I'm laughing. Finally, I get off. I get off the thing, and the cops giving me the ticket, and I'm looking at him. I'm like, I didn't say anything because I didn't want to say nothing. Andrew was drinking beer in the thing. So Andrew gets out of the car, and the car was down, right? Because he's heavy. He gets out the car, and the car goes up. And the door opens, and he's out, right? And then he comes, and this cop is giving me the ticket like this, right? He's writing it like that, and he goes, and he looks at Andrew, and he goes, and his eyes went up, and I was looking at him, and I wanted to laugh because it was so funny. And he was like, he's almost like mesmerized, right? And then Andrew says, "You're going to give him that ticket?" And he says, he didn't even say anything. So he looked at me and says, "Here, finish it." So he finished it, and then Andrew grabbed it and he goes, put it in his pocket, and he says, "Don't worry about it, boss." He says, "The Portland police chief is my friend." And he walked away. I never saw the ticket. I never paid it. Because it never went on my record, so it got taken care of.
Wow. Yeah, that doesn't happen too much anymore, but in the old days, there were some benefits to being a wrestler.
Oh yeah. But Andrew was of his size, you know.
Yeah, I mean, and he was such a star too back then.
Yeah, he sure was, brother. He sure was.
Now, I know you have shirts. Is there anything you want to tell the fans where they could buy those shirts, or anything you want to plug before we go here?
Well, we got them on our website. You got it, HectorGuerrero.com. I got it right there. This is one of my consulting cards, and so that's my consulting card. And you can actually go, and there's a PO box number right there. And also, there's also, let me see if I can do that so I can see it. Let me make sure I'm doing it right there. But the HectorGuerrero.com, and then my wife takes care of it. And there's teas that are for sale there, and we got a lot of things. In the future, I'm planning to make these available for some bidding. These are the 2 original masks that I used at the very beginning, and you can tell they're ring worn because they're all really bad. But anyway, that's a situation. Oh, and I was also Lasertron for Paco Alonso, CMLL, and he had given me this type of a mask, but I can't. I won't sell these because that's his design, and I used this mask when I was in Mexico. And later on, turned it blue. And the reason, because the whites get really dirty, so I turned it into a blue mask. So there we go. Anyway.
And for those that don't know, it actually is harder to wrestle in masks where they have the mesh over the eyes, as I've found over the years.
Yeah. You can't hardly see, you know. And
Yeah.
It's an interesting, but not worse than those eyes that I had like from Gobbledygooker, man.
No, that's a story that just wouldn't happen nowadays, where they're literally pushing you out the curtain with no practice.
Yeah. That was not a nice situation, but I didn't know who it was. They were pushing me. All I could see was white, not black, white.
Maybe it was Bruce Pritchard.
No, Bruce. No, Bruce is a sweetheart, man. No, he's actually took care of me when I was there. Okay. He was Bruce Pritchard, and I got no iffies to say with anybody up there. It was, you know.
He seems like a nice guy, but he's a gorilla a lot of the time, so I don't know if it would have been someone at Gorilla pushing you.
No, he wouldn't have done that. And when I worked for TNA, I want to say that was a great time working for TNA. And I want to thank Mike Tenay, because Mike Tenay was instrumental in me having that opportunity, and he's a great announcer. I even compare him with Gordon Soley. That's how good Mike Tenay is. I'm surprised that they're not using him. They are missing out in a guy that knows wrestling and knows lucha and knows wrestling back and forth. The repertory he has, the history he has on wrestling is immense, man. And I got a lot of respect for Mike Tenay. I mean, he's one of my personal friends. And but they're missing out on the guy.
You were an announcer with him, right? You were an announcer in TNA and you
Well,
managed LAX, I think, at one point.
yes, and I did that with them, but I also I was a Spanish announcer. You got to remember de que hablo muy bien el español. Soy mexicano y puedo hablar muy bien el español porque soy mexicano. So what I'm telling you there is I'm a very Mexican because I speak Mexican. I know how to speak it. So I was a translator, and then I was a color commentator while Willie Urbina, which is a very personal friend of mine. I wish him the best too, and great guy, awesome guy.
I know him from Puerto Rico. He used to work for
Yes,
IWA Puerto Rico.
yes, and we were both the voices there until our contract ran out, and they decided to. I guess they were going to sell because then after we left, then they sold pretty soon later on, and then they took TNA. I mean, they took Impact Wrestling to Canada. Now it's back again in Orlando, how I hear. So wrestling has really changed. So when I see wrestling now, I go, wow. I go, I never thought it changed this much, but everything changes. So
yeah, I think after AEW came, Impact Wrestling went from kind of took a nosedive in popularity because AEW became the strong number two.
right.
Maybe
Yeah.
they'll use you there down the road as a commentator.
I mean, I wouldn't say no, but I mean, it all depends, with all respect to them. And I would have a lot, I'm a guy that's going to be honest, and I'm not gonna teeter tatter for this or that. Neither am I going to be over there kissing, somebody's what. But I'm not, okay. But I am, who I am, and if they can be right, okay. And if not, well, go ahead and do it. It's your show. I can't tell you. I know how I would run it. I know how us Guerreros ran it when we had our own. You know, I know how we ran it, and our father taught us to run it with diplomacy, taught us to run it with honesty and being right with all the guys, and they loved us because of that. And we would tell them flat out right, you were going to get used or you weren't going to be used, or what your position was. Not any lies like they've done to some of us in this business. And I talk about all wrestlers to some of us, and I say all wrestlers in this business.
Well, I thank you a lot for being so generous with your time. It's been very interesting hearing your stories, and I'll let you close this interview off with whatever you want to tell the fans.
Well, I want to tell you one thing is I want to say is don't ever think there is not a creator. There is a creator, and he's in everything. He's the one that made the earth. He's the one that, if you think about it, it's got a divine creation. So if that's where you seek, you're going to find it, and you'll realize that he is true and he's real, more real than we are here on the earth. So that's my big thing. I tell a lot of people. I even tell people that for every action there's a reaction. That's a law of science, and I'm a teacher, so I know that. So every action has a reaction. You plant apples, you're going to get apples. You do good, your good's going to come back. You do bad, it's going to come back. It's better to come back to this lifetime if you're doing bad than to come back later, because after that that's forever. And you might not understand that, but you may someday. And as far as wrestling goes, I reach out to all you wrestlers that you call yourself superstars or anything that you think you are. Learn your craft. Stay humble and do right. And remember that, you know what? This is an entertainment sport. I say it again. This is an entertainment sport. Okay? It's been way before me, people said it, okay? Jim Herd, Vince McMahon, many have said it. It's an entertainment sport. So remember that. Learn your craft, have fun, enjoy it, and make people love you. And people, if you're the bad guy, make people hate you so that it can be a fun time. And remember that there is a creator and he watches everything we do. All right. Thank you.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it and click the subscribe button to not miss any